want a preview of what things are going to look like for all of us in the future? Well, we've had it. We've had it for over 2 years now as we've been screaming from the rooftops. I know nobody gives a crap, well, not enough people give a crap about the January 6th political prisoners. And maybe you're still sitting there right now. Wow, they were evil criminals. They breached the Capitol. Screw them all. Okay, that's fine. You know what? That's fine. Have that opinion. That's fine. But you understand they're coming for you too, right? They're coming for you next. Have you ever heard of Thomas Robertson, former Army Ranger? Wait till you find out what's happening to him and how it's tied to Trump. And joining me now to tell me about all that, tell all of us about all that, is the great Julie Kelly. She's written the books you need to be reading. You should be reading her Substack, which is declassified. It's outstanding. Julie, who is this Army Ranger? What's happening to him? And what's this have to do with Trump?
So Thomas Robertson, as you pointed out, a former Army Ranger, also at the time of January 6th, a Virginia, I believe, sheriff's deputy. Of course, he, like so many others, fired from his job after he was arrested on numerous counts related to his activity at the Capitol on January 6th. He was not charged with a violent crime. He wasn't charged with assaulting police officers or bringing a firearm into the Capitol. He went inside for roughly 20 minutes and left. Since then, his life has been destroyed. He was found guilty, of course, quickly. He was the second defendant to go to trial in April of 2022, quickly convicted by a D.C. jury on all counts, including, Jesse, obstruction of an official proceeding, 1512C2, which is a post-Enron law that the DOJ has now weaponized against more than 300 defendants like Mr. Robertson, and is one of the 4 counts in special counsel Jack Smith's indictment for the events of January 6th on Donald Trump. Now, what's interesting is we've had 2 what they call split decisions by the D.C. Circuit, the appellate court, on the applicability of 1512C2 in these cases. This is headed, probably very likely, to the Supreme Court, which is, I write about my new piece in Real Clear Investigations. And that's how Mr. Robinson's, he's part of a separate appeal, but that's how his case and these appellate cases could have some consequence or ramifications for Jack Smith's 4-count indictment against Donald Trump on this very same charge.
Okay, now connect the dots for us. Does that mean Trump is more screwed than we already thought, or less screwed? Sorry for my non-legal terms, but I'm an idiot, Julie.
No, you speak my language. Actually, it would mean he would be less screwed. If the Supreme Court agrees to take up these split appellate court rulings, look, this 1512C2 was never intended to criminalize political dissent. It had to do with evidence tampering after, as you recall, the Enron scandal, the shredding of documents by Arthur Anderson. This closed that loophole, but this DOJ has weaponized it now, turning political activity into a crime, a felony punishable by up to 20 years in prison. Mr. Robertson was sentenced to 87 months in jail. He's still languishing as his appeal now probably will end up at the Supreme Court as well.
Okay, Julie, I'm going to sidetrack before we get to Florida, because you just brought up a question that I find to be interesting, this appeal process. And I realize this is very complicated. And honestly, I may be asking you something nobody can friggin' answer. Donald Trump gets convicted in one or all of these jurisdictions. Obviously, you have to be a friggin' moron to not know that that's coming. He's obviously going to appeal by the grace of God. What kind of time frame are we looking at? How does that work? Does he still go to prison? Does he not go to prison? Does he get his appeal the next day? Is it 2 years from now after he's been rotting in Leavenworth? How does this work?
You know, it's such a good question, and it's an important question, especially related to Jack Smith's indictment in Washington, D.C. That trial date, Jesse, has been set for March 4th. Now, I was in Judge Cannon's courtroom yesterday on the classified documents case, and this was a big argument that was debated on both sides. Jack Smith claims the D.C. trial will take 4 to 6 weeks. Now, think about that, Jesse. That includes jury selection. If we were dealing in a fair jurisdiction, jury selection for a trial like this in a nearly 100% Democrat city would go on for possibly weeks. So he's estimating 4 to 6 weeks. Donald Trump's lawyer said in court yesterday, they're anticipating more than 2 months. This would bump up the end of the DC trial to the May 20th trial date for the classified documents case. But to your point, let's say he is convicted in Washington, D.C. at the beginning of May, middle of May. He's convicted on all charges. Usually sentencing happens 2 to 3 months after that. So that would take us into midsummer, late summer. Usually a defendant cannot appeal a conviction or a sentencing until he is sentenced. So I'm not sure what other mechanisms the Trump team would have to file a quick, probably an emergency stay to the sentencing, as this makes its way to the Supreme Court under a number of protections, not the least of which is executive privilege and presidential immunity. So this is going to get really messy really quick. And so, yes, is there a possibility he could be sentenced and remanded into custody sometime in the summer based on a DC conviction? Yes, it is. So that is what, is next on the horizon, and where that goes after sentencing, I'm not quite sure, but I'm sure Donald Trump's team is working on it as we speak.
Okay, sorry to belabor the point because I want to get to the Judge Cannon thing, but I have a follow-up with all that stuff. Give me an out here, Julie. Is there any indication, once he's convicted in D.C., which everyone knows is coming, and once they try to throw the book at him sentencing-wise, is there any indication from how they've treated the January 6 prisoners that they will allow him to stay out of prison while he goes through all this? Because all those people were just the appetizer and Trump's the main course. Everyone knows that.
Right. So you do have judges who, even on sentencing, and sometimes DOJ will ask them to be taken immediately into custody. We saw this with the pro-life activists. This happened a few months ago. Now, sometimes the judge will say, and this would be Judge Chutkan in this case, say, okay, well, we're going to set his sentencing. He has to present himself to jail, surrender, say, October 1st. Which don't put anything past DOJ or Judge Chutkan, as you know. So in that time period, of course, he will be appealing, looking for an emergency stay, meaning hold his sentencing, hold when he has to turn himself in to custody, turn himself into jail. And look, Judge Chutkan is going to have a tough time because, as you know, Jesse, he has Secret Service protection. Where are they going to incarcerate Donald Trump and accommodate his Secret Service agents at the same time? So that will complicate things. So it very well could be that she delays actually when he has to turn himself in. These are really just open-ended questions and really rely on the appeals for all of these. Now, he's got several motions pending in the DC case right now, seeking, as I said, presidential immunity, that this is a selective prosecution, that this violates, his constitutional rights. There's several motions pending in Chutkan's courtroom to dismiss these charges in this case. Of course, she's not going to, but her decisions related to those motions will help expedite, again, any movement to the appellate court. I know this is confusing. I hope that I'm dumbing it down. I'm not an attorney either. So, hopefully this makes a little bit of sense to you and to the audience.
No, it's wonderful. It makes total sense, and we thank you for it. It makes sense. These are things we don't know, right? You're there. We're not. Okay, speaking of there, the Florida case, you're there. What's happening?
So, as I said, I was in the courtroom yesterday. Judge Aileen Cannon, who is a Trump-appointed judge, and she has DOJ's number. I'll tell you, Jesse, it's very refreshing being in her courtroom versus all of the DC judges who I've seen in action over the past 2 years. She does not act as a rubber stamp for this Department of Justice. And she was really holding Jay Bratt, who is the lead in the classified documents case, lead attorney for Jack Smith. She's really holding his feet to the fire and pressing on how they can bring 2 criminal indictments, unprecedented criminal indictments against the same defendant in less than 3 months' time, then turn around and ask both judges to expedite a trial schedule. She asked Jay Bratt directly, Mr. Bratt, tell me in DOJ's history of a similar instance where your department has brought criminal indictments against the same defendant in a matter of a few months and seeking expedited trial, where the trial dates are basically bumping up against each other. I know you'll be shocked to hear this, Jesse. He did not have an answer for that.
What a shock. What a shock. Julie, I know you're busy. I need you for 20 more minutes, but I know you're busy. I love you. Come back soon.
Anytime, Jesse. Thanks.